Well, thank you very much for coming. I am told I need to inform you, turn off your cell phones, and at the end of this, you got to rate the thing, etc., etc. So let's get started because we're on a schedule. My name is Ramine Darabiha. You can ignore spelling; it's complicated. And I'm a product manager at Storm8. We make free-to-play mobile games. In the past, I was the head of R&D at Rovio Entertainment, the company that is famous for the Angry Birds series. And after that, I became the chief product officer at Halfbrick, where I worked for a couple of years. They're the company that's known for the game Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride. So a lot of my experience is about being a product manager type of guy, basically working on new products, etc. in mobile gaming. So if you think about the world in my perspective, it's really about trying to make games stand out. If you look at the mobile market itself, there's 500 new games every day. There's a lot of what's going on there? Very diverse in terms of quality. So you have amazing games like Clash Royale and Monument Valley, absolutely beautiful, well-crafted, really amazing games. And then you have stuff like Flappy Trump, Flappy Bieber, Sky, Subway, Chase Rail 3D, which is a clone of Subway Surfers, Happy/Fruit 3D Chef thing. Also, and my favorite at the moment is Heroes of Soulcraft, which is its description is like a mishmash of like every single keyword you want. So don't remain in vain, glory in victories near the league, become a legend, and all that shit. So it's pretty poor. So really, what I do is to try to make the best games, the juiciest, the funniest things that will stand out from that huge crowd of games. And that's my know-how. And when you think about that, essentially it means that, the market has so many games, and you really have two choices. One, you can make a great polished game, make it premium, etc., and hope you get featured. But if you want to create a sustainable business, if you want your game to survive and you can make the next one, and it's going to be a job, then you gotta get profitable. You gotta understand how to make a business out of this thing, which really means that you gotta understand the behavior of your users, the data behind the game, and all these kind of things. And so that's really, I think, the craft of mobile and of product management in that. So when I left my job at Halfbrick, I was unemployed for like 3 months, and I was talking with my friend Yahtzee Croshaw, who is the guy who's well known from the Zero Punctuation cartoons. See a lot of heads nodding. Who watches Zero Punctuation? Ah, that's great. He didn't make it here today. He's a bit shy. But we were talking, he also lived in Brisbane, Australia, and he's been working on that game for like 2 years, I think, at that point, because a lot of people don't know that besides Zero Punctuation, he also makes games and writes books and this kind of stuff. So I was like, hey, I can help you out. And so he was working on this game called The Consuming Shadow. It's essentially a procedurally generated, narrative-driven game. It's really this like dark, moody adventure game for PC. It's a horror game. It's inspired by Lovecraft. It's kind of a mishmash of like the gameplay of a roguelike, kind of like FTL or something, with the exploration you'd have in a game like Oregon Trail, where you go from city to city, gather resources and this kind of stuff. And the game is about gathering clues to discover which ancient god from like the Lovecraftian world is invading the world and how you're going to banish them, and how do you start a ritual to do that. There's also an insanity mechanic that is inspired by Eternal Darkness. And so those of you who played that game, it's like a cult classic kind of game that Yahtzee and I really loved. There is an insanity mechanic in the game where every time you screw up something in the game, you go a little bit more insane, and there's a little bit more of a chance to kill yourself. So you have this suicide minigame. If you don't click fast enough, you die. It was pretty popular in the game. So what I did in the game was I was the producer, I was the title. So Yahtzee built the entire game. I took care of the other stuff. I was the producer. I made sure that the game ran on schedule and we shipped it on time, because he had been postponing it for 2 years. I made sure that we got the game on the stores. I made sure that the game was out there and people and media would know about it. And I arranged its QA so that we made sure that, no more bugs, etc. And so this talk is basically about the lessons I learned doing this as a mobile product manager, shipping an indie game. So we discussed, okay, how are we going to launch this thing? And so the game was built in Game Maker Studio. It's a very powerful tool for person who doesn't have like a lot of programming skills. So compare with using an engine like Unity and this kind of stuff, of course it's like, less potential, etc. But for someone like Yahtzee, it was perfect because he wanted to take this kind of like auteur approach to making a game, the same way as he'd write a book or make his podcast. So he wanted to be able to create his own little experience with every little detail crafted by him. And so great tool for that. But it came with limitations, of course. So he made it, of course, for the PC first, because that's like his core platform. I was pushing for it to be on Mac as well. And so that's what the game was, as a PC horror niche title at that point. Which really meant that for us to start considering other platforms like mobile, we'd have to do very substantial changes to the user experience of the game, to the design of the game, the controls, and all this kind of stuff. So we decided to scratch that and maybe consider it later. And that was really down to like the way the game was built. For similar reasons, we chose not to do next-gen consoles because we didn't know how to do it. And we had no idea what we were doing if we want to explore that path. So again, we didn't do it. We tried to do a Linux build, but GameMaker didn't make it really easy for us. So we had to scratch it too because the market potential was too small. So in the end, we figured that the best places for us to push the game would be indie-friendly platforms for PC and desktop games, basically. So we figured, okay, let's go and release the games on these platforms. So again, coming from mobile, at that point, my understanding of shipping an indie game is basically this. It's like if you build it, they will come. It's a bit simplistic. I hear some laughs in the room. I'm really sorry. And so I just assume, well, you don't have to do all the fancy stuff we're doing free-to-play. We'll put the game on the store, and people will buy it, especially because it's Yahtzee. And so at that point, I really see in the mobile games industry is that it's pretty easy to get on your high horse and think that, what we do is like super complex and really legit and all that. And it is, sure, but it's also easy then to make that leap that companies that do not do that are maybe a bit simplistic. And I was, guilty of that. And so when you have that perspective, your understanding of shipping indie games is maybe a bit different. So you can imagine my surprise when I started trying to sell this game and get this game distributed. So when we started setting up for Greenlight, of course, I knew we'd have to get votes, and I knew we'd have to pay $100. But the really key difference for me is when you come from the mobile world, you're used to like anything goes, right? If you can ship a game like Flappy Trump, your expectation is that pretty much anything goes on the store. Steam is not like that. And so essentially at this point, the exercise of shipping a game on a platform like this becomes essentially like a beauty pageant, where you have to set up your game with like the prettiest screenshots and the best possible pitch, etc., to try to stand out from the other 4,000 people trying to sell their game. And so it really becomes this exercise of trying to get votes. So we went ahead and did that. So we figured that, of course, screenshots, videos, all this kind of thing would be great. Of course, the issue was that the game is kind of ugly. Actually, the number one criticism of the game is like, oh, it looks like a Flash game from Newgrounds and this kind of thing. And so doing screenshots wasn't really a way to compel people to buy the game or to get votes for Greenlight. So instead, well, we had Yahtzee. So on his own channel, he posted what he calls an ego review, which is he reviews the games that he's worked on before. It's a smaller audience than The Escapist, but it was very helpful. And we also worked on the website of the game. And once we had that, we had enough material to start sending out emails to everyone. Now, that was the most excruciating, sad part of making this game. No one cared. I was really surprised with that. Like, we had a cool procedural Lovecraftian adventure game made by a named guy who's like big on YouTube and all this kind of stuff. I tried to play off my contacts as well and all that. No one cared. It's really easy to think when you're building a game like that, people will care because it's the media and they should cover your game and do reviews and all this kind of stuff. And I sent over 500 emails to media out there about how awesome the game was and found an angle of like the articles these people wrote. And we got very few responses, but we got some, and it got us forward. So I didn't underestimate the amount of effort required in this. The other thing is the obscene amount of hustling you have to do to push your game. I always thought that indie devs that do this whole circuit of like going to conferences and participating in all kinds of competitions and really trying to be present at every event were not focusing on their game. I was absolutely wrong. The fact that you go out there is so crucial for your game, for you to get some kind of recognition, get your name out there, and make sure that people will care. It's so important. Unfortunately, actually, for this game, Yahtzee was very busy with his book and his work on The Escapist, and generally not very fond of doing conferences. I was about to get my new job. We weren't able to do a lot of effort on this direction. Another thing that we could do, and we have done to some extent to get more votes, was to ship the game early on another store, on a smaller store. And so there's all these stores that you're familiar with. We decided to shoot for the Humble store first. They were very receptive, extremely helpful, and they got us featured on their store for a while, and that was enough actually for us to get the votes we needed for Greenlight, which was awesome. I did encounter another problem that I never even considered possible, which was that when we pitched the game to GOG, they said that the game was too ugly, and they will not sell it. I've never even considered that. Like, I mean, again, I come from the world where people ship Flappy Bieber and stuff. So, you know, that was so bizarre. To imagine that you could be a developer who works on something for 2 years and stores just say like, nah, you know. So, it was pretty interesting. So I really do encourage people who are making a game to explore as many stores as possible, as early as possible. Engaging the community. So we knew that, you know, I mean, both Yahtzee and I were very active on social media. We knew that we'd have to engage the players and we'd have to post a tweet about the game, you know, every day or something like that. We didn't underestimate the amount of effort required to really collect feedback and ask people for the kind of features that they want and the bugs that they found on every single channel all the time. So we had forums on Steam Greenlight. We had the YouTube channel from Yahtzee with all the comments from people. We were engaging streamers for the game from the Humble version that we shipped. And we were hoping that people would have feedback there, etc. We were actually engaging with the streamers to make sure that there was game modes that they would like to have in the game, and we actually built them. And also posting all this stuff regularly on Twitter. So all of that was ways for us to gather votes. And lastly, this resulted, of course, in some media coverage. Not a lot, but enough for us, again, to get through Greenlight. And so with that, basically, we're able to tackle the issue of being able to sell the game. And so all the efforts above are really about, in a way, doing user acquisition. You know, when I work in mobile, like user acquisition is kind of a solved problem. You could do what you see on the left here. It's, you can post an ad for your game and people will see the ad, they will click it, they will be taken to the store, they can install the game and play it. On mobile, it's totally a solved problem. You can do the same with viral installs. So friend sends you an invite, you get to the store, install game, you play it. You cannot do that kind of like install funnel for a PC game. Won't work. Can't take them to Steam and get the game. So you can't do traditional user acquisition. And that really means that market requires some other kind of thinking. And so really what we're doing above, and the whole thing about indies going to conferences and trying to, you know, work with streamers, etc., actually makes sense because that's the way you get users for your game. That was really a fairly profound shift in my understanding of shipping a game like this. Another change in my line of thinking was the understanding that the platform itself and the expectations of the players were really directing the way you would build your game. So when you look at a game like the recent SimCity game, for example, and the recent Need for Speed game, people have been extremely vocal about how these games were online only. And they were like, I'm not going to buy this game, it's online only, I don't want that stuff. So PC players, core players, they really want this kind of thing. And in my line of thinking, it's always been better to have a connected game because you could do social stuff, you could gather data and all those kind of things. And the fact is that, well, if half of your players are offline, you're not going to have data and you're not going to be able to monitor that to make a better update. So again, my understanding of, oh, indies don't do this kind of thing was really changed because it's actually, well, people don't want this thing in their game. So no social invites, no connecting to Facebook. And what that really means then is that if you consider the game modes, the features, the content in these games, of course it's affected by the market, right? So if you think about how in mobile you have the expectation of connectivity for your game, and your game is always going to be connected, you're always going to be able to push an update to the app, you're going to download new content over the air, you come back to your game. So here in Puzzle & Dragons, every 2 weeks they have a new collaboration. So at some point they did Batman. In Hearthstone, you have new quests every day, and they're rotated via the server. Obviously, in a game where the expectation is for it to be mostly offline, well, you're going to have much less of an incentive for you to push for this kind of thing, because your players, it's not their priority, at least. Another thing that really doesn't facilitate the inclusion of these kinds of systems in your game is, well, the platform. It's really tedious to push updates. Now I realize, okay, there's auto updates on Steam and all that, but the fact is there's several hundreds of pictures of memes of people being really pissed off with Steam updates. And the reason for that is when you put one on Steam, it's going to force update right at the start. It stops when you're playing a game. People will cancel them, etc. And you can't really expect for like people to have the latest version of the game and also to want to download the latest version of game on Steam. So really, running your game as a service at that point is pretty tedious. And this is why people don't want to do that. Now, the best games do it. When I look at Nuclear Throne, at Kerbal Space Program, at Spy Party, absolutely amazing. Like my appreciation of the effort they do to post screenshots every day of like, hey, today I added new weapons to the game or whatever. What do you think of this new sprite and this kind of stuff? Like the best games do it. They run their games with like daily updates and the same service-like approach that we do in mobile, but it's so much time and commitment. So it's absolutely doable and I absolutely recommend it. It's just that we underestimated the effort and the craftsmanship required to do that so much. But we did okay. We do have, you know, fairly active forums and stuff in the game. People were like recommending stuff. And they were pretty active and enthusiastic about the game. So after going through that whole process, we felt like, okay, we're ready. So we had the game on the Humble store. We gathered all the votes. We managed to get through Greenlight in 10 days. We're super happy with that. And we're like, well, we got like 10 reviews about the game, and we're not really sure how to get more momentum out of that. So we don't just want to put the thing on the store and hope to get a few more sales on Steam. So we figured we'll have to make a big deal out of it. Maybe like a relaunch kind of thing. So we came up with the idea of making a revamped, updated version that would have new game modes and new stuff, and we called it the Insanity Edition. And of course, we promised the buyers on the Humble store that they will get keys, they would get the updated version with the new game modes. So we added challenges to the game, which is fairly similar to what's in Binding of Isaac, for example. So very difficult kind of situation and stuff that you have in the game to and you have to try to beat that, basically. We've added support for Steam cards for the game. People want to collect them. We've added a bunch of new monsters to the game. We added achievements. Now, it turned out that people who play this game are very keen on doing speed runs, and they're very like completionists and stuff. So it's kind of like the archetype of like the hardcore roguelike player. And so we have some pretty crazy achievements, and people really enjoy them. We also added an endless mode, which is essentially an infinite dungeon, and you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it gets more and more difficult, which is great because it was really easy to add to the game due to the nature of the game, basically, to a procedural nature of the game. So these changes weren't a lot of work, but they were enough for us to get some traction. And what was interesting was that once we passed Greenlight, the media took us more seriously. That was great. So it apparently for them, like to pass Greenlight is like a sign that you're a real game, but before that, not really. So that was an interesting lesson. I guess the result overall was that well, we got the game featured on the Humble store, and that was very nice of them. I'm very, very grateful. We're featured as a nice new game on Steam on the front page thing, and that went away in a couple days, but it was still helpful. We sold 12,000 copies-ish of the game, so it's not a massive success. It's not a failure either. It was a nice side project for both of us. There will be more at some point. I mean, Yahtzee is working on new games. I have my job. We've gotten a number of reviews, but not really. So that's really a testament to like how difficult it is to push your game out there. There's been a lot of excitement from streamers, especially in Russia for some reason. I have no idea why they're so keen on the game, and it's like legit channels. It's not like fake people who were asking for keys and stuff. So in Russia, it's just popular. They like the Consuming Shadow. We've gotten 0 awards because we didn't apply for anything, and that's also a testament of like you need to go out there and push your game and make sure that people will know about it, because you know no one's gonna come and say, well, that was actually a great game. And lastly, people really like the game. So we were happy with that. In spite of the low quality graphics and this kind of stuff, we got 12,000 people pretty happy with it. I would say that what I've learned is that indie games are a lot of work. They are not less work than free-to-play mobile games. They are not less work than what you ship with a bigger studio on mobile. They are just different, and they're really about. They are different because the market wants different things and the platform is built differently. And so because of that, people build games that way. And so it is just a lot of work in places that maybe don't have quite the same visibility, at least to me at the time. And I really underestimated the amount of hurdles and barriers that I would encounter trying to ship this game. So I think that, thinking about how things are changing in the industry, there's been a lot of talk about the indie apocalypse and this kind of thing, and it's really kind of like becoming the same thing as mobile, where you can have the flappy trumps and this kind of thing. There's so many games out there. I think that the skill set of product managers in mobile and people who've got the experience of like standing out and making their game stand out is becoming very important for indies as well. And so really this whole journey was about me understanding that there's another side to product development. And I hope that I can engage more in these as well to try to teach them some of the skill set that we have in mobile. And I hope that more indie games will be built with more focus maybe on the data and rapid iteration cycles and this kind of things. And that's all I have. Thank you very much. Oh, actually, I do have one more thing. So, I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I hope you'll enjoy the game as well. So, some free keys for Steam, if you want to get the game. There you go. Voila. There's a lot of cameras popping out at the same time. And absolutely come forward if you have any question. I'd love to answer them. Anyone? All right. Well, guess if we're done, thank you. Oh, you do have a question? All right, well, I'll answer it.
I was just wondering, when you did contact the press and Humble Store and Steam, what approach did you lead with, especially for the Humble Bundle store after you weren't getting much responses?
Okay, maybe I can start with the press. The press, what I did was I looked at the contacts that were out there. I asked some other indies whom they've been talking to in case they could make an intro. I looked at PressKit, which is the really useful tool from Ramine Ismail. I looked at also all the media that would be relevant, so just what would be the top site in the category and this kind of thing that covered some other games like this one. I looked up the articles from each writer, and then I contacted them and said, well, you've covered this and that, you like procedural stuff, you like Lovecraftian stuff, you like indie, you like Yahtzee, you like whatever. Here's why this game would be interesting for you. And so I actually crafted 500 different emails to reach these different guys. Which is why it was a little bit depressing. But I do encourage doing that because, that's the only way that pays off, right? Like if you're just gonna blast an email to everyone, it's not gonna work. For Humble, it was different. Humble is very approachable, because they talk to indies all the time, right? Like to feature their games on the Humble bundles and then the Humble store. So I just spoke with their BD guys. And we pitched them the game, sent them a copy, and they were like, that looks pretty cool, and they just agreed really fast to feature it. So it was fairly straightforward. GOG was a little bit more work. We had to find the guys on LinkedIn, look them up, and contact them. But they replied within a week as well, and then a little bit email ping pong going on to try to argue that the game wasn't too ugly. But
and then one more thing.
Yep.
Releasing it on the Humble Store first, were you hesitant to do that because you weren't releasing it somewhere else, or do you think the feedback that you got from that allowed you to actually be successful later on?
I think that we would not have been able to get the traction we got on Greenlight in terms of votes without a feature on a store. Humble happens to be, I think, the biggest besides Steam, and of course it's an order of magnitude smaller, right? But it helped a lot. And it also helped us to like have some proof out there that the game is ready, it's shipped, it's good quality, and this kind of stuff, without just showing screenshots in the video. So you know, when you see a Kickstarter, for example, and you're like, I don't know if this is legit, like it helped a lot to have something out there. And the fact that Humble was also very open to us giving Steam keys, so we promised them to people, and they're like, okay, well, we'll give it a go, you know. So I think it was a really big factor of us getting greenlit really fast. I mean, and the thing is, we were in the top of the greenlight games within 10 days, so it was really a huge boost. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Any other questions? Yes. Do I feel comfortable giving keys to reputable sites? And what about smaller ones? I mean, I don't give a shit. We've given them to a lot of people. Honestly, the response is that we just want people to have the game. You know, it's not like we're getting rich off the game or anything. I had a very small commission on the game, and I really want to help Yahtzee ship the game out there. He made the vast majority of the money, obviously, and we just wanted to get more players to enjoy it. So we've given a whole bunch of copies. I'm sure that a bunch of the Russian emails I've received were maybe not legit YouTube channels, and that's fine. It's like 5 people, like fine. So you had a question as well? Right. So did we ever discuss reskinning it so that the game would be more appealing? We have for 2 reasons. One is to address all the feedback from people, and I also had like my mobile PM brain, which was like, well, if we just released a reskin of the game with like, instead of like visiting towns in the modern era, you're like a samurai or something, like people will buy that game. But like he was like, no, I don't want to do either of these things. This is my game. I've made the entire thing. He's made the sound effects of the fly that goes bzz, like, I mean, he's done every single detail of that game, of the actual game making, and he wanted it to remain that, not a different kind of vision or anything. So this is very much like his own personal thing, the same way as he'd make his book or this kind of thing, or his podcast for that matter. And of course, I argued with him that, you know, you will sell more if it wasn't ugly, and it was like, but that's not what we're doing here. You know, and that's why we're giving keys to people and this kind of thing. Sure. Any other questions? All right then. Thank you very much.